Hello friends, today we will take a closer look at the doomed fighters of ancient Rome. We are talking about the gladiators of the Roman Empire. We will look at the life and death in the arenas of these people, who were only able to stay alive through their victories in the arenas. Gladiators were people with a striking external aura and people with excellent physical fitness and possessed a strength that the average person could never muster. A large part of the ancient Roman population did not have the attributes mentioned. On the one hand, many Roman citizens wanted to be like the gladiators, but on the other hand, no Roman citizen wanted to share the fate of the gladiators. Let's start with the video. Number 1. The Grave Fighters. Researchers today assume that the origin of gladiator fights comes from the Etruscan people. After the founding of the city of Rome in 753 BC, the Etruscan people were the regional superpower in what is now Italy. It was a tradition among the Etruscans that after the death of a master of the house, slaves would fight in front of his grave until one of them was killed by the other. That is why the Etruscans, and later the Romans, also called gladiator fights funeral fights. The first gladiator fight was held in the Roman Empire in 264 BC. This first gladiator fight was held at the funeral of the deceased old consul Junius Brutus Para. The vast majority of gladiators consisted primarily of slaves. In some exceptional cases, there were also free citizens among them, who took great pleasure in fighting and killing or being killed. Number 2. The freedom achieved. The slaves, who had been forced to fight as gladiators, could gain their freedom after winning numerous fights in the arena. The successful gladiators were always known by their names to the large audience in the arena. The masses usually loved and admired a successful gladiator, but also eagerly awaited his death. The free and voluntary people, who fought as gladiators in arenas, received money and honor for the fights. The slaves, who fought as gladiators and gained their freedom after their success, had limited rights after gaining their freedom, which differed from a citizen with Roman citizenship. The same limited rights also applied to artists, acrobats and prostitutes. They could not join the professional army or take on government offices. There were also a few gladiators, who refused the freedom they had gained. For example, the gladiator Flamma, who refused the freedom he had gained 4 times. Ultimately, the gladiator Flamma was killed in the arena. Number 3. The School. In the Roman Empire, there were gladiator schools in every major city. In these schools the gladiators were trained daily to become powerful fighting machines. Researchers now assume that around 10% of gladiators died from the hard training in the schools. The gladiators initially fought each other with wooden swords without spectators. With their fighting skills acquired, fights with real weapons were also held in front of a small audience in the school and outside of the school. As soon as the gladiator had learned the necessary fighting skills, he was sent into the arena by his master. The owner of the gladiator could increase the market value of the gladiator through victories in the arenas and, if he wanted, resell him for a much higher price. As a further source of income, the gladiator owner placed bets on his gladiator. Number 4. Barefoot. The gladiators always fought barefoot in order to have better balance and make faster steps in battle. The downside was that the feet were exposed to numerous injuries. The wealthy owners of the gladiators had the best doctors in the gladiator schools. The gladiator owner always wanted to help his gladiators get back on their feet as quickly as possible and see them fighting in the arena again. The gladiator schools did not always patch up the gladiator because injuries were always of varying severity even after a victory. The gladiators did not always die from cuts, but also from blood poisoning. Number 5. The reward for victory. The gladiators received large sums of money for their victories in the arenas. This was an important factor for the operation of a gladiator school. For just one victory in the arena, a gladiator received the amount that a Roman legionary earned in a year. The greatest reward in the history of gladiators was received by the gladiator Spiculu. Number 6. The opinion of the audience. In the arenas, there was always a special referee present. Of course, the opinion of the audience was also important for the victory or defeat of a gladiator. If a gladiator could no longer fight for some reason, he raised two fingers, the index and middle finger. This was an invitation to the crowd to decide his fate. If the crowd wanted the gladiator to die while he was still alive, his opponent was ultimately executed. The defeated gladiator got on his knees and was struck down by his opponent with a mercy blow to the neck. If the defeated gladiator was famous and popular, he could leave the combat zone alive with the consent of the audience. Such a case rarely happened. In addition, the owner of the pardoned gladiator had the reputation of being a stingy and bad loser. Number 7. Ritual of death. In the history of gladiator fights, there was usually a fixed ritual for how a killed gladiator was taken out of the arena. First, to make sure that he was dead, he was touched with a red-hot iron. Because there were some gladiators who had pretended to be dead and wanted to escape the fight. The gladiator was then taken out of the arena on a stretcher. In addition, the fighting area of the arena was covered with sand, so that large blood stains could be quickly covered with fresh sand. After that, a new fight could begin. Number 8. The gender. In the early stages of gladiator history, gladiators were exclusively men. After a while, gladiator schools for women were also built. This meant that women also fought in arenas. There were fights where women fought against women or men against women. There were also a few cases where a female gladiator won against a man. Some Roman emperors still felt that the type was not enough for this fight. Lilliputians and people of short stature also fought against each other in the arenas. As gladiator fights progressed, more and more standards were set. The Emperor Titus, for example, held gladiator fights for 100 days in a row. Normally, it is questionable who could watch such bloody fights for so long. Number 9. Fight to the death. In many Hollywood films, fights in the arenas are shown with lots of blood and a very large number of corpses. This type of fight actually took place. But the movies and series exaggerated a little for a certain wow effect. In about 30% of cases, gladiator fights did not end in death. The gladiator, who lost, only suffered a moderate injury. In addition, the owners of the opposing parties often agreed before the fight so that the gladiators would injure each other in the duel as much as possible but not kill each other. The owners were interested in keeping the gladiator alive for as long as possible and thus making more capital from his potential victories. In some cases of arena fights, the duel was stopped by the referee due to a serious injury to a gladiator. During gladiator fights at private parties or during show fights in the market square of a city, killing the opponent was usually forbidden. Number 10. The Emperor's Thumb. In most Hollywood films or series, the emperor or the audience decides the fate of the loser of a gladiator fight with their thumbs up or down. If the thumb was up, the defeated gladiator was left alive by the winner. If the thumb was down, the defeated gladiator was brutally struck down by the winner. In reality, the emperor decided the fate of the loser. To further inflame the mood in the audience, the decision was often handed over to the audience. If the audience hid their thumb between the remaining four fingers, better known as our modern-day queen wrestling, the loser was spared. Hiding the thumb meant that the gladiator winner should hide the sword. However, if the crowd held out their thumbs, and it didn't matter whether the thumb was up or down, the loser was executed by the winner with all severity. In some cases, the audience didn't even gesture with their hands. They just shouted, "Spare or kill." I hope you liked the video. If so, please subscribe and give it a thumbs up. See you soon, your channel History Check.